Okay, so it's 9 a.m. and I think we can start now. I can see lots of you have joined recently. So we can start with our first topic for today, as to waste to not waste any longer time. So as I already announced last time, so we will be discussing today about the foundations of modern leadership. So more of a historical background about some of the main theories of leadership that we have out there and how all that developed. Next, we will be discussing some individual differences and traits when we talk about leadership. So we'll talk about what makes leader difference, what kind of traits are associated sometimes with good and bad leaders as well. And we will conclude today with a topic or discussing power, which we know is a tool that usually leaders need to use to influence their subordinates along. We'll discuss, we'll define power, what are some of the main sources of power, as well as the consequences of power as well. So without further ado, I think we can start by discussing some, yeah, it's just, just shared the wrong slides, so. Okay, so I hope you can see this chapter 3 slides, the foundations of modern leadership. So this is the topic that we're gonna start discussing. And the main objective or the main things that we're gonna discuss here are, we will explain the 3 major eras or periods in the study of leadership and how those eras actually contributed to the modern leadership. And then we will move to discussing some of the early theories of leadership. We'll talk about Fiedler's contingency model, the normative decision model, the path goal theory, substitutes for leadership, and the leader-member exchange theory as well. So this is mainly what we will be discussing today. However, as we usually do, before we start discussing or elaborating on those main points, there is one particular question that we usually try to discuss before we start with the lecture. And that's the question today is, do you think that some people are born leaders and can rise to the top no matter what the situation is? Or and what key characteristics do you think that these leaders possess actually to be successful or to rise to the top?
This is Catherine speaking.
Yeah, thank you.
In my opinion, I feel like maybe it's partially true. For example, I still believe that if some people, they were born in the leading family or something like that, will absorb kind of the personality or characteristic or the method of thinking way from the family, and then they can, how to say, they absorb when they were, since they were young, let's say, or were born, and then of course, but for the future, if they can develop themselves to be in other way, it depends on the individually. And for the key characteristic, do they process? Mostly, I really feel like the leading people or leader, they should have like a vision, and like they have to see the problem as a challenge, and to see something that followers they don't see, something like this, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to add something?
Yeah. In my opinion also, some people are born leaders. Not necessarily to say that others who are not born cannot be leaders, but there are really some talents that you'll see whenever you interview, whenever you talk to the person. And to me, my tick marks, you know, in identifying a leader, is if the person is deliberate, number one. If the person has that if the person is charismatic, it's very important because that's one way of influencing others also. And if the person is action and results oriented, and you'll see that in even in the day-to-day practice, or in the day-to-day in their day-to-day, you'll be able to see that, you know, a person really has that skill set, and a person has that potential to be a leader.
Okay, thanks a lot. Anyone else would like to add to this what Florence and Catherine said? I will not say anything because what we're going to explain next is going to be related to this particular question. Anyway, so if if no one else would like to add something to this, we will continue. First of all, we will provide a kind of a history of modern leadership theory, where we can identify three main eras of modern leadership. The first one is the so-called the trade era, which is from 1800s to mid 1940s, and here the focus was mainly on the personality of leaders. We're going to explain later. It was mainly this era that the belief that leaders are born rather than made that dominated much of this late 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. And then we have the behavior era, which was mid 1940s until the 1970s. And here, this is known, as you can see, the behavior era, where the focus shifted from leader personality to leader behavior. And then we have the contingency era, which is the early 1960s to present days. And here was the focus was more on understanding both the leaders, however, the situational factors as well. So the leadership situation or the context in which these leaders are, let's say, are leading to say, or they exhibit their leadership skills. So starting with the trade era, as I said, which is late 1800s to mid 1940s, and this is some of the main assumptions of this particular trade era, where, as I said earlier, that leaders are born rather than made, which dominated much of this particular era. And according to, let's say, to this, during this particular era, it was commonly believed that leaders, by virtue of their birth, were endowed with special characteristics, with special traits, with special qualities that allowed them to lead others. And these special characteristics, traits, were presumed to push them toward leadership, regardless of the context. This is something that Catherine actually mentioned in the beginning. And also, during this particular era, they believe that leaders and followers have different traits. However, the findings of the research that was done mainly in this particular era, they did not find a single trait or set of traits that clearly defined leadership. So they could not find particular traits and to say that, okay, these particular traits are what made good leaders, and these particular traits are the ones that make a bit bad leaders. Because in different successful leaders, they could find different traits. That's why we're going to see later on when we're going to talk in details about in the second part of this session today, where we're going to talk about the individual differences and traits. We're going to see, for example, some of the main theories that are related and that define mainly some particular characteristics that the research mainly has elaborated. However, we're going to see that all these different theories, they have identified different characteristics. So you cannot say that single traits or set of traits clearly define leaders. And also findings found that traits play a minimal role in the leadership of these or being successful leaders. And also findings show that traits are not the dominant factor in leadership. So in a way, the findings did not support some of the main assumptions of this trait era of leadership. And then we moved to the next era, which was mid-1940s to early 1970s. And mainly this particular era of research in leadership emerged because the trait approach did not show or did not yield the expected results, as we could see earlier. Because what the main assumptions were during this particular era, those were not supported by research finding. And because the need to identify and train leaders became something, so to say, a necessity during the World War II. This is when the researchers actually turned to behaviors rather than traits as a source of leaders' effectiveness. And according to them, by focusing on behaviors, provided several advantages, let's say, compared to the trait approach. And the first, some of the main advantages is that behaviors can be observed let's say much easier and much readily compared to the traits. You can much better research or observe the behavior of the leader compared to their traits. And this is mainly related to the fact that behaviors are observable and measurable in this regards. And also behaviors can be taught through a variety of methods. So you can train, you can learn, you can make people to behave in certain ways through training, through teaching. So this is something that makes a behavior much, let's say, suitable for let's say for not only research, but to train leaders to become successful leaders as well. And these three main factors that I mentioned, this provided a clear benefit during that particular years, because we are talking about World War II, to the military and various other organizations with, let's say, practical interest that they had in leadership. However, even here, for example, we have some of the early work of Lewin and his associates concerning some of the main leadership styles were identified. So the demographic, autocratic, the laissez-faire leadership. So this laid the foundation for the behavior approach to leadership. So we know that demographic leaders were defined as those who consult their followers and in a way give chance or allow them to participate in decision making. On the other side, we have the opposite. We have the autocratic leaders and those who make decisions alone. And then we have the laissez-faire leaders and those that do not provide any direction and they do not become involved with their followers in this case. So despite the fact that these three types of leadership style were clearly defined, however, research even here failed to establish which of these styles would be most effective or which situational factors in certain cases, the context, so to say, would lead to the use of one style compared to the other style. And as we know, each of these styles had different effects on those that follow, on these subordinates. Let's say, for example, when we talk about laissez-faire leadership, so here leaders are not involved. So they only provide information to the subordinates, to those that follow. However, there is no guidance or evaluation that comes from the leaders. However, when we talk about autocratic leaders, in these cases, autocratic leadership caused followers to become submissive. So you have to submit to your leaders. On the other side, groups that were led by democratic leaders, those were relaxed and became more cohesive. So some of the main findings of this particular era were some of the key behaviors, that some key behaviors are task structuring and relationships consideration. Behaviors alone do not determine effective leadership. So once again, even this era of behavioral research did not support some of the main assumptions. And also there were no clear findings as to which behaviors are the most effective, like as we had earlier when we come at the when we talked about the traits. So there were no single traits or set of traits that were identified as the must-have traits for leaders. The same with behavior. So no clear findings to which behaviors are most effective. These are some of the examples of major leadership behaviors that were, let's say, identified during this particular year. So task structuring behaviors like set goals, clarify expectations, set schedules and timelines, and assign tasks. And if you remember when we talked about the difference between managers and leaders, especially nowadays, these are some of the tasks that usually managers do, and some behaviors that mainly are related to relationships consideration are to show empathy and understanding to your employers, which we're going to see throughout this course, that this is extremely important when we talk about motivating your employees. Be friendly and approachable, to allow participation, which leads to empowering your employees to feel appreciated and to feel that they are an important part of the organization, as well as to nurture your followers. And then we come to the last era, which is the contingency era, which is the early 1960s, as we said, to the present. So even before the behavior approach lack of success, let's say, to be able to explain fully and predict leadership effectiveness, there were a number of research that actually called for a more comprehensive approach to understand leadership. So these are some of the main assumptions of this contingency era. So there is no one best way to lead. As we're going to see here, researchers recommended the situational factors. The thing like depends on the tasks, depends on the type of work group. So these should always be taken into consideration. So it will depend on these situational factors that different leadership styles, different leadership traits would be necessary and would be more effective. So it's the situation that will determine. So the primary assumption of this contingency view is that the personality, the style or behavior of effective leaders depends on the requirements of the situation in which those particular leaders found themselves. So the ones that are listed here were some of the main assumptions that were suggested by this particular contingency era, or the research that was done during this particular time. So no one best way to lead, the situation and the various relevant contextual factors are the ones that are will determine which style or behavior is most effective. Also, people can learn to become good leaders. This is also one of the main assumptions. Leadership makes a difference in the effectiveness of groups and organization, and personal and situational characteristics or factors do affect the leadership effectiveness. However, even with this particular era of research, continues to be well accepted, some of these main assumptions. However, even the most recent research, recent approach to leadership mainly focuses on the relationship between leaders and followers, as well as on the different aspects of charismatic as well as visionary leadership as well. So these were some of the main assumptions. And now we move to discussing some of the early theories of leadership. And when we talk about effective leader, he must or should be able to know how to use available resources. And then with knowing how to use these available resources, he should also be able to build a relationship with the followers in order to achieve these goals. We have said it earlier that this particular relationship is quite important. And as you could see earlier, we had some like task related behavior and then relationship related behavior. And those are mainly used to build the relationship between the leaders and their followers. One of the main theories, especially in this early era of contingency, was the Fiedler's contingency model, and he was the first researcher to propose a contingency view of leadership. And according to him, leadership effectiveness is mainly a function of the match between the leader's style and the leadership situation. So if you want to be an effective leader, you should match your style to the situation that you are let's say facing in that particular time. So it's not that one particular style will be suitable to lots of different situations. So it's mainly the situation that you are based that will determine the style that you are going to use. In certain cases, even autocratic leadership would be much suitable compared, let's say when we talk about the tasks that you have at hand, the followers, subordinates, the context in which you are operating. So if the leader style matches the situation, the leader will be effective. Otherwise, the leader will not be effective. And as you can see, these leader styles, they do have a trait-like quality, and those cannot be changed from one situation to another situation. That's why the leader must change the situation to fit his or her style. So these were some of the main assumptions of Fiedler's contingency model. And some of the main elements, especially one of the main elements, is the leader's style. We talked earlier, task or relationship motivation, measured by the so-called LPC scale that he proposed, which is least preferred coworker scale. And this is a measure that he used to determine whether the leader is primarily motivated by task accomplishment or by maintaining a relationship. And what his research actually showed is that people's perceptions and descriptions of their least preferred coworker provided important insights into the basic goals and priorities toward either accomplishing a task or maintaining a relationship. If you would like to know whether you are let's say, task-oriented or relationship-oriented person, in the book, at the end, you have the self-assessment. We don't have the time, let's say, in this particular course, but if you would like to know, you can do it for yourself. So you can identify whether you mainly focus on accomplishing tasks or building relationship as a leader. So you have the self-assessment 3.1, which you can find at the end of this of the chapter that we are talking about. So according to him, the people that did have low LPC scores, so those who give a low rating to their least preferred coworker, so they describe the person as incompetent, cold, untrustworthy. So these are usually those that are task motivated. So according to Fiedler, they draw their self-esteem mainly from accomplishing their task well. So that's how they define whether they have been effective, whether they have been successful. And when these task-motivated leaders or the groups that they lead fail in accomplishing their tasks. So they tend to be harsh in judging their subordinates, and then they are often highly punitive as well. So when you are a task-oriented, once you fail, you always start blaming or put the blame on your co-workers. And on the other side, the moment that the task is accomplished, the group is successful, the task-motivated leader is comfortable with the details and with monitoring, let's say, these routine events. On the other side, people that do have high LPC scores, so they rate their least preferred coworker positively, let's say as loyal, warm, accepting, they tend to be more focused on the relationship, motivated on the relationship. And usually they draw their self-esteem not on accomplishing the task, but rather on having good relationships with others or with their co-workers. And for them, the least preferred co-worker is often someone who has been not disloyal, to say, and unsupportive, rather than incompetent. So it's not that they identify someone as least preferred, not because they cannot do the task, however, because they have not been loyal to the group in these cases and not supportive to the group, but not that they have been incompetent. And these people that are relationship motivated or focus on relationship, they are usually bored with the details. And mainly what's the main focus of these people are these social interactions at work, because it's through these social interactions that they build relationship. So as we said, the task motivated individuals, they focus on tasks, whereas the relationship motivated persons, they mainly concern about relationship. One particular let's say comparison that has usually been done is the comparison between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. That mainly illustrates the differences between task and relationship-oriented leaders. And it was during the 2004 presidential campaign that Clinton very clearly stated that she considers the role of the president is not only to provide, in these cases, vision, but also control and directly federal bureaucracy. However, we had the opposite with Barack Obama, and he announced during his campaign that he believes that the president's role is to provide vision and inspiration while delegating the responsibility of managing agencies. So this shows more or less the two different approaches when we talk about the leadership style. And those that do fall in the middle of the scales, and these have been mainly labeled as social independent leaders. So usually they tend to be less concerned with other people's opinion, and these people usually may not actively seek leadership role. And then the second main element of the contingency model is the situational control, and mainly because effectiveness of the leaders depends on match between, as we said, the person and the situation. Fiedler has used these three situational control factors that you can see here to describe a leadership situation, and he has ordered them in order of importance. So the first one comes the relationship between the leader and the followers, the leader-member relations. The second is the amount of structure of the task, and the third one is the position power that the leader has. And these three elements do combine to define the amount of control that the leader has over the situation. Again, even for this one, you have a self-assessment at the end of the book. If you have time after the class, you can go and do and self-assess yourself with regards to this. And according to Fiedler, the most important element of any leadership situation is the quality of the relationship, as well as the cohesion between the leader and the followers, and among the followers themselves. And according to him, good leader-members relations mean that the group is, as I said, cohesive and supportive. And this, on the other side, helps the leader because it provides him with high degree of control to implement what they want. Because in cases when you have a group that is not cohesive, that is divided, or has little respect or support for the leader, then we can say that the control the leader over these followers is extremely low. And then we have the task structure, which is the second element of this situation, and it refers to how clear the task is to the followers, so what it is expected from them to do. So we mainly talk about the clarity of the task. So once we have a highly structured task that has clear goals and procedures, also few paths to the correct solution, few correct solutions, and can be evaluated easily. And this degree of task structure will affect the control of the leader. And one particular factor that is said that moderates the task structure is the experience level that the leader has. So if leaders have experience with a task, they will perceive the task as more structured. If they don't have experience, they will make any task appear to be unstructured as well. And the combination of these three main factors that we explained, the leader-member relations, task structure, position power, they will show, or they will yield the amount of situational control that the leader has over the situation. So position power mainly refers to the leader's formal power and influence that he has over the subordinates. So the power to hire, the power to fire, to reward, or punish. And usually those leaders that do have high amount of formal power, they feel that they are more in control than the ones that do not have this particular power. So yeah, this I explained this, but here we have the let's say these slides that show, for example, how this let's say how this combination of group performance and situational control let's say are correlated in these cases. So in the moment that leader-member relations are good, the task structure is high, the position power is high, so the group performance is going to be high. However, when task structure is low and position power is also low or extremely high, whereas the leaders-members relations, in these cases, we're going to have the high LPC, as you can see. So it moves up, whereas the other one, the low LPC. So you see it moves down with the group performance. And this shows, if we look at this, let's say at what we see in these slides, it shows that this situational control plays an important role. However, we should pay attention to the good and bad relationship between members and the leader, as well as the task structure. So that will require that we adjust, let's say, we adjust to the situational control in order to achieve highest group performance. And as you can see here, moderate situational control is the one that leads to a high LPC and much higher group performance. And as you can see here, moderate situational control is when we have good leaders-member relations, the task structure is low, also the position power is moderate, so it's not that high. So it's a combination of both of them. So this is these were some of the main assumptions of Fiedler's contingency model. And here we have some practical implications for us as future leaders, for example, in the future. So according to some of his main findings, leaders must understand their own, let's say, style and their leadership situation. So you should not be able to match or to apply to the situation if you don't know your own style as well as the leadership situations. These are crucial, so you should understand these first before you apply. Leaders should also focus on changing their leadership situation to match their style rather than try to change their style. So you should not work on changing the style, but you should try to change the situation in which you are based. A good relationship with the followers is key to a leader's ability to lead. And this we could see from the previous slide when we had that showed how leaders-member relations, how important were they to the performance of the team. Also, leaders can seek training to compensate for lack of task structure. So if you cannot do the task, as we said, those that did not have experience with doing a particular task, so Fiedler's contingency model suggests that this is something that you can learn. So you can ask for additional training in the company wherever you are based individually. Go and train yourself to be able to better accomplish that particular task. The second model of these early theories of the contingency era is the normative decision model. And this model mainly started following some particular questions that were raised during this particular time. And those were that should the leader make decisions alone, or they should involve followers in decision making, and what factors can help a leader to determine how to make decisions. And these are some of the main assumptions of this normative decision model. So according to this normative decision model, leaders are effective when they use decision styles that match the situation, which is in line with Fiedler's contingency model. Leaders can learn to change and use different decision styles, which is different. Fiedler said that you should not change your style, but you should try to change. You should try to change the situation. According to the normative decision-making style, you are an effective leader when you learn to change and use different decision styles based on different situations. So according to the model, you should be able to, let's say, to apply or to use different leadership styles in different situations. And according to him, understanding the leadership situation is essential to the effectiveness of the leaders, because once you are able to understand situation, you will be able to use different decision styles that will need to match that particular situation in which you are based. So there are two main elements of this normative decision model. The first elements are the decision styles, so the leader's decision styles, and then we have these situational contingency factors. When we talk about the leader's decision styles, the normative decision model identified 4 decision methods which are available to the leader. The first method is the autocratic, in which the leaders make decisions with little or no involvement of their followers. So they do not involve followers in decision making. The second decision method is consultation. So leaders do consult their followers. However, the final decision-making authority remains with the leader. The third decision method is group decision. Here, the leader relies on consensus building among the team to solve a particular problem. And then we have the delegation decision style. In this particular style of decision-making style, the leader totally delegates the decision-making to their followers or to employee. So these are some of the main decision-making styles that the leaders have according to the normative decision model. And these styles, actually, the leader should be able to apply or use these styles in line with the different situational factors that they have identified. That's why, according to this model, it's important that you first understand the situation, because based on the situation, you will know which of these styles you are going to use, whether you're going to be autocratic, consultative, whether you are going to apply group decision making, or you're going to totally delegate decision making to one particular employee. So to better understand the contingency factor, then he identified two central contingency factors. And the first one was the quality of the decision, and the second is the need, the quality of the decision and the need for acceptance and commitment by your followers. However, there were other contingency factors to consider, and this was whether the leader has enough relevant information to make a sound decision. So how well he was informed, because we know to make decisions you will need information, and whether the problem that he needs to solve to make decisions is structured and clear, as well as the likelihood that the followers will accept his decisions or not. So whether the employees will agree with the organizational goals, and whether the what we explained earlier, whether the employees are cohesive and whether they have enough information to make the decision alone. So this particular model has identified some contingency factors that you can see in this slide. So as I said, quality requirements, commitment requirement, leader information. So how much does the leader have enough information to make a high quality decision? Structure of the problem. Is the problem clear and well structured? Commitment probability. So how likely you think that your employees will commit to the solution if the leader makes the decision alone? So if you do not involve them, how likely are they to commit after you make a decision? Also, we have goal congruency. Do employees agree with and support organizational goals? Employee conflict. Do you have cohesion among your employees, or there is a conflict among your employees over a solution? And then we have the subordinate information that I mentioned earlier. Do employees have enough information to make a high quality decision? So without being informed, without having the information, is extremely hard for you to, let's say, to act in line or to make particular decisions. So at the end, we come to several practical implications that are suggested by this normative decision model, and that's that the leaders must understand the situation. On the other side, the leaders must also understand how and when to use the different decision methods. So understand the situation, and then you should also be able to match the situation to the decision model. So this is when the leaders should understand how and when to use the different decision methods. Also, what this model suggested is that participation is not always desirable as a leadership style. So in certain cases, you are more autocratic. In certain cases, you consult. In certain cases, you totally delegate the decision making. So this is what this model shows. So you should not always have your followers participate. Also, leaders must pay particular attention to their followers' needs and reactions when making decisions, because as we could see from some of the main factors, later on you should have them on board. So you should have them committed to your decision. So if you do not take these needs and reactions into account when you make decisions, you might not get their commitment later on when you would like them to follow or to commit to the decisions that you have made. And then we have the path goal theory of leadership, which was developed around early 1970s. And according to this path goal theory, The role of the leader is to clear the path that subordinates use to accomplish goals. So the leader is there to motivate the followers in order to complete their task by removing obstacles. So leaders are there to remove these particular obstacles in order to ease the job of these employees to accomplish their goals. So by doing so, what the leaders do contribute is that they allow their subordinates to fulfill their needs. So in these cases, leaders do reach their own goals as well. That's why the leaders must change his or her behavior based on needs of their followers in these cases. So as you can see here, the leader's actions should be to focus on obstacle removal, to become comfortable with both task and consideration behaviors, as well as to understand the followers' perception. So this is what this framework of path goal theory. So we have leader structuring and consideration. As you can see, some of these situational contingencies that we discussed earlier, like task structure, as well as the employee need for autonomy and for autonomy of these employees. And all this leads to much more effectiveness, which is shown by having satisfied employees and having motivated employees in these cases. So as you can see here, we have some of the practical implications of the path goal theory, and that's the leaders must understand their followers' perception of the task. On the other side, leaders must take their followers' needs for challenge and autonomy into consideration. So this is what the previous framework that we had here shows: the leader structuring and consideration, employee need for autonomy, because all that lead to having much more satisfied and motivated employees. And when followers need challenge or the task is challenging, leaders must avoid being directive, because that's when they need the leaders to remove those particular obstacles in order to ease their job to accomplish that particular task. However, when the task is routine, boring, or stressful, this is when the leaders should be supportive to the followers in order to have them more satisfied and motivated. And then we have another, let's say, another model, which is substitutes for leadership model. So according to this particular model, there are particular situations, or in some situations, the relationship between a leader and the followers is not needed to satisfy the needs that the followers have. So there are situations where you don't need the leaders, and there are various factors, various aspects, mainly of the work environment, that can help to substitute for leadership behavior or to neutralize the actions of these leaders, because this work environment or these factors do provide enough resources and support to allow followers, to allow these subordinates to achieve their goals without them having to refer to their leader. For example, let's take you have an experienced team of salespeople in pharmaceutical products. So they have spent considerable amount of their time on the road, and they can control over their commissions. So they will not rely much on their manager. So their job provides them with the challenges, and their experience allows them to make decisions on their own. So without having to rely on the leader. Similarly to the example, let's say skilled emergency room nurses or technicians, let's say on the other side, they also do not rely much on the leader or manager to take care of their patient. If you are a nurse, you cannot go and ask each time, let's say, who your superior is on how to deal with your patient. So it's that you simply know what to do. It's mainly your experience, what you have learned, that gives you this particular freedom to decide on your own. So in these circumstances, there are various situational factors that do replace the function of your leader of providing structure or providing guidelines and providing support as an employee. So according to the substitutes for leadership model, the model proposes that there are various organizational tasks and employee characteristics that can lead or can provide substitutes for the traditional leadership behaviors of consideration and initiation of structure. So if you have the information about the task and its requirements, if these are clear and available to you as an employee through different means, like your own experience, the team that you work with, or through the organization, so it's more likely that you will not need the leader's structuring behavior, as we discussed earlier. However, when support and empathy are not needed or are available through other sources like your co-workers, so you as a subordinate, you as a follower, you will not need leaders' consideration behavior that we discussed earlier. So, however, this model has identified some follower characteristics that make them that he considers them to be substitutes or neutralizers that actually lead to you not needing the help of your leader in this case. Experience and training. So these substitutes for leader structuring, follower professionalism. So this has to substitute leader consideration and structuring as well, and the lack of value for goals, which actually neutralizes the leader consideration and structuring. Also, this model has identified some task characteristics that help you or to substitute for the leader when we talk about the task. So the moment the task is not ambiguous, so an ambiguous task, they substitute for leader structuring. Direct feedback from the task, substitute for leader structuring as well as consideration. And then the moment we have a challenging task, that substitutes for leader consideration in these cases. And then we have the organizational characteristics that we said are extremely important. And the moment that you have a cohesive team, so that's considered to be a substitute for leader structuring as well as consideration. Leader's lack of power helps to neutralize structuring and consideration. The moment you have a task that is standardized and formal, so standardization and formalization, they do substitute for leader structuring. Organizational rigidity neutralizes leader structuring, and then we have the physical distance between the leaders and followers, which is neutralizes structuring, but not only, it also helps to neutralize consideration as well. And last, we have some important implications that we can, let's say, put into practice that we can use from this substitutes leadership model. Leaders can use various substitutes to free up their time or to empower and develop the followers. This model shows that technology is extremely important, and that's something that we can see nowadays, because technology can support the development of substitutes that we mentioned earlier. And the last implication of this theory is that teams and autonomous work groups can use substitutes positively in these cases. And we have another important model, and that's called the leader members exchange model of leadership, which is an extremely important. I think many of us have experienced, or in a way you're going to see when we explain, that's something that we find in many organizations. So many of us use experience leadership. We have experience with leadership either we being personally leaders or we being followers in the past as well. So this is something of a personal relationship between us and our leaders. So leadership is a personal relationship between the leaders and each followers. However, you have seen that from different situations in different organizations that you might have worked, that leaders do not treat every follower the same. So and every follower does not experience leadership the same. So what it means, with some leaders do have some much better personal relationship with someone within the organization compared to the others. So that shows that leaders do have closer and richer relationships with followers that do belong to their in-group than those that do not belong to their in-group, which are considered to be the out-group. So this is how that is, let's say, is expressed. So here we have the leader. So usually he keeps much better relationships with those employees that are part of the in-group. So those that he has much better relationships. So he does favors to them, but he expects favors, let's say, to them. For example, what he can do, he can give to some of these followers to do a particular task that he can later use to promote them. So he does them a favor. However, he asks favors in return. However, he has much, let's say, much colder or much relationship with those that do belong to the outgroup. So this is the kind of relationship that he establishes with his followers. So with some of them that do belong to the in-group, quality of relationship is much better to those that do belong to the outgroup. And these are some of the main stages on how the leaders actually put someone within the in-group and someone in the outgroup. So it's the testing and assessment first. So they they try to see whether you can make it into the in-group or not. So they do the testing and assessment through various, let's say, commands that they give you, asking for a favor, and that's where you develop your trust with your supervisor. So that's where they see that you can make it in the in-group, and that's when you create that emotional bond with your leader, and then you become part of that group. So these are some of the practical implications of the LMX. Organizations, especially leaders, should avoid highly differentiated groups. I remember when I used to work for Cope, which was another company, which is a chain market here in Switzerland. This was something clearly in the department that I worked. However, sooner or later it created problems. That's why, as a leader, you should avoid highly differentiated groups that you can easily recognize who is part of the in-group and who is part of the out. So we had a leader that had his in-group, so he would never mingle with those that do belong to the out-group. So you would see always in companion with them, either when going for lunch or. So it's better for you as a leader to avoid these differentiated groups. So try to have a good relationship with each and single person in the group. And this another suggestion is to keep membership fluid and dynamic, and to maintain different in groups for different activities. That will ease your job as a leader. Also, what's important, that you should not base this, you should not put people into your in-group based on your, let's say, on the favors that they do to you personally. That should be based on performance and potential of these employees. That's when you can have success as a leader. And also, you should review your criteria on how to put people in the in-group regularly. So you should, let's say, change your criteria on how those people do make it into your in-group. Also, what's important is that leaders should consider culture when they determine their, let's say, the membership of these people into their groups. So here we come to what we discussed earlier. So are leaders born or made? So as we said in the beginning, and some of you rightly pointed, leader is much more than a collection of traits. So there are not particular traits that we can identify with leaders. And that shows that leaders are not born, but they are made from experience and from the interaction of individual, as well as many contextual factors. However, as we could see from when we discussed the traits era, there are no traits that guarantee that only by having that particular traits, you can be an effective leader. We're going to explain later on when we come in the second session. And most leaders usually do succeed when they find themselves in the right situation that they can mold, or when they can adapt their style to the situation. So this is the explanation to the question that we asked in the beginning of this lecture. So proper being an effective leader is that you understand the situation, and then you are able to adapt the style and the leadership style to a particular situation. So that's what is considered to be crucial for a leader to succeed. So that's all we're going to have later on an exercise. If you have any question, you can ask. I would like that I will put you into two groups like we did last time, and there is a case on page 124, 125. Which is called the caring dictator. So just take, I think 15 minutes would be enough to go through it, let's say, and then discuss these two questions that you have on page 125. So how would you describe this particular person, Jack Hartnett, and his leadership style, and why do you think that some of the employees, based on what you're going to read on the case, find it difficult to work for him? I will randomly now assign you into groups, so you can discuss it first among yourself, and then let's say maybe you assign someone to, let's say, explain what you have discussed in the group to the rest of us when we get back, like after 15 minutes. Can we discuss it? So maybe someone from the first and someone from the second group. So what is it that you discussed with regards to the first question? So how would you describe his leadership style?
We agree that like his style is more like autocratic, because like he has to be the one who make all the decisions.
Okay.
And on his way only.
Okay. Is participation allowed or not?
It's not, Professor, it's non-participative because he wants to do things mostly his way, which is also in line with it being autocratic.
So I'm sure the other group would think the same. So why do you think some employees would find it difficult to work for him?
We discussed in our group, Professor, that we feel that it mainly depends on the type of employees that he has, number one. And another factor could be the type of industry that they're working on. Well, with regards to the employee personality, for example, I personally myself, I like to keep my professional life and personal life separate. So I'm not comfortable with crossing that kind of boundary. So definitely Jack Hartnett is not the boss for me. But we also did agree in our group that for some people, this really works because it creates some kind of closeness and community for them, which is, again, comfortable for some others, but for others, it's not.
Okay.
With regards, sorry.
Yeah. You can.
I believe one person in our group, I think it was Jan, if I remember correctly, also suggested that it also depends on your role in a company or the type of industry that you're working on. Because, for example, if you work in a creative role or a creative industry, it will be very hard to do your work when you're being micromanaged or you have an autocratic boss.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks a lot. The other group, anything you would like to add with regards to this particular question?
Yeah, since I also work in a creative industry, I have the same sentiment that I won't be able to keep people if I'll do it my way. Number one. Number two, in a creative in my industry, you have to keep on mining young minds, and they will feel that this is an old way, this is an old thinking. To them, it is an old thinking because they are not empowered. You don't listen to them, and they don't mind making their tenure short. They come and go. So if this is the style of leadership that I will give to my people, then I'd probably not be able to retain them, even if, my target at this point is just 3 to 5 years, especially with my junior creative team.
Okay, so more or less, this is what you're gonna see actually when I release the answers to the questions of this case summary. So mainly we are dealing with a highly authoritarian leader who tolerates very little dissent. So he does not allow participation, but on the other side, he demands that employees do obey and are loyal to him. However, what we can see is something which, despite the fact that he's highly authoritarian, however, he shows that he cares about his employees and he has concerns about their lives. So some people might find it different, as we could see, for example, the case with Catherine, for example. So we see from the case study that he does not hesitate to get involved in their personal problems, but we have people that do not want that their leaders to get that personal, to be honest. And this is what Catherine actually mentioned earlier. So why he does that? I think he runs this particular organization, this company, like a traditional company, patriarchal family where the father is the figure. So he's benevolent and he's unquestioned leader. This is something I think we discussed last week. And with regards to the second question, why do you think that some employees would find it difficult to work for him? Actually, it's research-based that employees do not prefer to work for an autocratic leader. So this is what most of the research shows. So simply, you as an employee, I think many of you do have experience. You would like to be empowered and you would like to be consulted. So if you are not consulted, if you are not empowered, you do not feel that you are an important part of that organization. And this is something that should lead to more ownership of decision making and commitment to the company. As Catherine rightly pointed, employees may find Jack's interference in their personal lives and those practical jokes that he makes to be intrusive in these cases. So may consider that the 8 commandments are symbols of an inflexible games that we could understand from this case study. So that was all with regards to the topic that we had today. So actually, this case study is an illustration that of what we discussed, in particular some of the latest theories that we discussed? Well, it clearly shows that leadership should be a match of different styles that leaders should be able to apply, as well as the situation of the context in which that leadership takes place.